current candidates. The last round of the first stage of the tournament, first half of the tournament, has been played last night. It was an amazing round. Some major shifts in the leadership. But one thing remains the same. It's Jan Nepomniachtchi clear first after the first half of the tournament, just like in the previous two candidates. Pretty amazing stuff. All right, so let's go to the games. First game is they will play each other the round number 8. But first game, let's do Naka versus Jan. So this game was part of the fight for the top boards. Nakamura came prepared with the novelty, which he said he prepared 2 years ago. Unfortunately for him, Jan looked at this line 3 years earlier, so he was prepared. We see the Petrov, supposedly quiet opening, leads to draw chances, but suddenly things go very, very tactical. G3, and Nepo plays this pretty fast, which means this was a signal to Nakamura that he knows this line. Okay, no hesitation actually, just thought 5 minutes, played A5, very fast. The whole point is that you get the space for the rook, but also knight can develop, being protected by the rook, and also potentially this pawn will later take away this key square from the queen. So knight d2. White challenges black's situation here, and bishop e6. So again, indirect protection of the knight, also opening the path for the f-pawn to join the knight, and given white's pawn structure in this way, white will be very hard to press to hit this knight because there are a lot of sacrifices coming. So white now has to do and go for this line, otherwise he has nothing. Knight of 2 is the only move, but it's sufficient. The pawn is protected, cannot take this due to the discovered check. Also the bishop is now under attack, and king is now not very safe. So the whole point is that also this bishop is attacked, and if he moves anywhere away from this diagonal, from the diagonal f1, a6, and black just completes development, he's better. But if white moves knight to bishop to f1, it's still knight a6 and check, and also rook b8 is possible, yeah. But apparently it's not so easy after knight e5. So the game is like very complicated. Apparently after bishop a6, black just plays knight g4, takes away the square from the knight, and he prepares rook b8 next move, which leads to advantage to black. So bishop takes h7, main line. King must take, knight h3, the only move. Black plays this pretty fast. Nepo is blessed with a good memory, despite looking at this stuff like 4 years ago. So king g2 and bishop g4. He just again played pretty fast after 5 minutes of thinking, opening the path for the queen, but also more importantly the e-file for the trade for the heavy pieces. White needs to get this queen back, so he plays queen b7, rook e8. The bishop is untouchable, obviously, because white king is too naked here. You cannot allow this infiltration. Black is just completely winning. So white now must be very careful. And he plays queen b3 really fast, which means that probably they looked at knight e5, but I'm pretty sure this move will be looked at again by analyticians in this line, because I think after knight e5 black faces a little bit more problems. But okay, queen b3, that was just a hunch. But after queen b3, trade, queen e6, black takes over this important file. He has a pair of bishops, especially the strong light squared bishop. Naka has to play precise here, check, bishop f5 back, king g8 is also possible, but this is more forces white queen to go to f1. And now after knight d7, black gets the last piece into the game. He is now either going with the knight to g4 or to e4, depending on the circumstances. Now white faces a choice how to unravel his pieces here. So, theoretically speaking, white has extra exchange and a pawn, which is huge material advantage. But in practical terms, his king is very, very weak. He has to constantly watch for the light squares and potential checks, followed by the creation of the mating nets around the white king. And also now the biggest problem is how to develop this queen side, because you do need this knight on d2 to again protect the square against the black's bishop. So you cannot play knight f3. So there are two ways for white to play, is to develop this knight here and then play a4 and at least try to fight for the e file, because this e file makes things complicated for white. So knight f3 is played, knight f6, very logical, and I really don't like this knight g1 move. White tries to play with two knights, queen and king, versus two knights, pair of bishops and queen. Obviously at the moment black has more play here, so queen e1 followed by a4 and then again rook e3. The idea is that you need to challenge black control the e file, and then preparing slowly to get the rook into the game. Potentially also knight h4 is coming, and once knight g1 only once white is prepared with all his pieces in the game. Because what happened in the game, he plays knight g1, black plays king h7 first because knight is untouchable due to the losing the queen stuff. So he plays queen e2, knight f3 is now logical, but again it seems very complicated. But knight e4, maybe even bishop g4, it's hard to say. But Naka thought that he can again chase this queen, also control the e file. Same thing, but minus the rook here. And the big problem was that he now played this move. He was supposed to take on h3 first, trade this critical knight. Now black has only 3 minor pieces left in the game along with the queen, and that makes things more complicated for black, because with every trade white is getting closer to this material advantage which he has, with which he can start playing for a win. So after this trade on king g1, it seems like black has some problems to solve. I suspect queen g6 was the idea, but then just trade this guy and finish the development, because the rook protects the first rank and white is just winning here. So maybe not queen g6, maybe f5. But if you take here, then again black only got 1 pawn back, and he is down. He's down the whole exchange. He can try to win this pawn as well, which is his best chance. But after the trades, king goes back. These pawns are pretty weak, and knight and pawn versus rook in the endgame is not enough. So this is probably winning for white. So what happened is that Naka played a4, and he is about to join the rook to a3, but he is 1 move late. Neko finds this incredible tactical shot, which immediately equalizes. The whole point is that you cannot make this intermediate move due to the check on knight g1, and now black is completely winning. So the bishop must be taken, and then black has this check followed by the queen g6, and white king has no good moves to retreat. King h2, black can play queen g3 followed by knight f2, and in this position black is obviously much better because pawns start to fall. King is in a huge danger. If these pawns fall, black is going to have queen and 3 pawns versus rook, knight and bishop. But the most important thing is that these pieces are still unprotected and the king is in huge danger. For example, rook a3, queen f4, keeping the pin. So this pawn is unprotected. Now queen takes d4, and white must give up this pawn as well. So something like this: queen c5, rook c3, queen b4 probably, or queen e7, and yeah, this position is clearly good for black with advantage. So Nakamura tries to move the king here closer to his pieces. Check, grab, grab. But the problem is, if he has a couple more moves, then he can play rook a3, rook g3, consolidate, and then he has a winning material advantage. But the problem is he doesn't have time. Black grabs this and counterattacks immediately. Central pawn and the bishop. And you cannot give this pawn because after this pawn, another pawn will fall and black will have more than enough compensation. But after knight b3, protects everything, protects against the pawn breaks, but now white king cannot escape the checks. And the game is drawn. Yeah, it's amazing end to this game. Shows how in tune both players are with their chess, and the incredible complications that you need to calculate. So Nakamura played the preparation. He's ended up with 1 hour and 13 minutes on his clock. So that means he could have spent more time in the critical position where he blundered this bishop takes g3 resource. Because Nako was down to 18 minutes, so that was a small chance for Nakamura to stop Jan here, actually. If he took on h3 and played king g1, right? If he didn't blunder that. So the second game we have is this game, Fabiano versus Pragg. And in this game, what happened is Pragg surprised Fabiano with the French defense opening. French defense considerably narrows down the preparation, and it was definitely not at the top of the list for Fabiano. And I recall seeing Fabi, he's trying to recollect his prep. He did recall it, but he made some inaccuracies, and he plays e5 advanced variation, which is considered to be safe for white. But queen b6, a3, and now c4 is main move. The old main move, but bishop d7 is more modern approach. Modern, like, relatively modern. So let's go back, because I clicked something here by accident. Okay, so bishop d7 and b4. Yeah, you have to play b4 here, because otherwise, black's just going to have a very comfortable game. You need to grab the space. Grab, grab, rook c8, bishop b2. This is a very old, modern line. Now the only move is knight a5 after knight c3, because you cannot allow knight a4. If you allow knight a4, then this knight is stuck on the square, and it's pretty bad square. Closes the file. This knight is very vulnerable due to some g4 lines, but most importantly, knight goes to c5. So knight goes to here. And the threat of knight c4, thanks to this, forces white pretty much to play knight a4. And then queen c6, knight c5, knight c4. And this is the line. And I think here is the moment where Fabi didn't quite remember his prep. He plays this move after 5 minutes of thinking, but he realizes later in the game that the bishop actually belongs on this diagonal. So bishop had to return here, actually. Because on c3, it would be prey to different tactical resources. But here, after bishop c1, bishop is a little bit better, but black is still pretty solid with this knight on c4. So pretty good prep by Pragg. Fabi plays bishop c3, b6 immediately, forcing this knight on c5 to trade the bishop. White has temporarily a pair of bishops, but the bishop on c3 is bad. And again, there are all sorts of tactics incoming. So bishop d3, logical, and g6 first line. Now black's idea is very clear. Thanks to this knight which controls the square, bishop cannot get to this diagonal, and that means that black can play bishop h6, which will take away the square from the rook and leave black a measure of great control of the c file. In addition, bishop on h6 will aid this knight in moving to e3 if this bishop on c3 is unprotected. So Fabi now went into big thing, and he plays queen e2, which is played against this knight e3 idea. However, maybe bishop d2 was better immediately, because he'll end up playing this move. He was probably worried about giving this bishop, but white potentially can play b5 later. And also this bishop prevents black bishop from playing. Probably black is fine again. Rook goes to c4, nice light square, protected. And black can even sack the exchange here for this knight, because this bishop will be really bad. after black knight goes to d5. So yeah, so maybe, you know, it's the position where black surely feels like he equalized. Yeah. So queen e2, h5 is interesting. It's also first line. The idea is that not only you take away the square, so you prepare knight f5, but also after bishop h6, the bishop will be protected by the rook, and then black can go king g7. The question is, like, you could play bishop h6 immediately here, but then the pawn structure kind of favors white, yeah? And white can play h4, h5, potentially harassing this bishop. So h5, bishop d2, and yeah, because he was probably thinking that if he castles first after bishop h6, he won't be able to play bishop d2. I mean, black just trades everything, and more importantly, he castles, and there is no pin. So that's why Fabiano plays bishop d2 immediately, and he tries to create some threats along this pin, but it's not gonna work. Black managed to stabilize, move the queen away, and more importantly, the square is under control. So this was an illusion, and white has now absolutely nothing. Bishop a6 is probably should be played, but after rook c7, knight b8, black removes this bishop, gets both rooks on this file, and actually black is doing really well here. Okay, so bishop here, rook d1, knight b8, black is preparing this doubling, bishop back to d3. Opposite colored bishops, both kings are pretty safe, so it's safe to say that black is fine. He plays a5. I like this move, immediately challenging this pawn structure, which restricts this guy. Now, if you play b5, you restrict this guy, but you also take away your own squares, and you give black this pressure on this pawn. So ba looks very reasonable, and now the game rapidly approaches the draw zone, because symmetrical pawn, even though the bishops are opposite color, there are no targets. White protects this guy, black potentially, you know, plays knight c6. Again, very important that the bishop takes the square. Knight c6, yeah, rook b1. White tries to, you know, go around and hit this guy maybe. Now this was an interesting moment. You know, Pragg actually plays some aggressive chess sometimes, but not in this position. Yeah, he plays rook a8, and after that the game is drawn. But however, there was this extremely interesting resource to play g5 and go after this pawn. More importantly, also pushing this guy away from this perfect square. This is perfect square for white because he not only protects the pawn, but also eyes this e5 square, which becomes important after black plays f6. Okay, so this was a very interesting idea, followed by king g7, and now g4 is a threat. So h4, take, and black is actually, I think, is a little bit better because white cannot get to these double pawns, and black can try to utilize the rook to g4 and create more pressure on the white's position. So this was very interesting moment. Yeah, it's a little bit uncharacteristic of Pragg, this tournament, because in this tournament he tries to play aggressive chess, but in this particular game he plays rook a8. He wants to be ultra solid. He knows that Fabiano is very dangerous, and he just wants to make that secure draw, equalize comfortably, and the second stage he'll play white color against Fabiano. Right? So bishop b5, queen d8, knight is ready to go to e7, to f5, hit this guy. G3, knight e7, king g2. The queen here protects a lot of squares and attacks this guy. So white will probably try to play rook b3, and black just, you know, yeah, both sides are trying to minimize opponent's play, and both sides capitalizing on their strength, right? White is capitalizing on the b file, black is capitalizing on the c file. None of the sides have clear points of entry. Rook on c3 doesn't do much. So queen d1 with the idea of, again, playing rook b3, rook here, rook trades, and yeah, massive trades are coming. And and it's just basically a draw. So yeah, black can play bishop h6. I think it was a little bit better if you really want to play rook c8, because after bishop b4, rook c1. But you know, rook trade, and it's just obvious draw. Yeah, black is not going to wait and allow this knight to trade this bishop. The bishop will just dance, and this bishop will also dance, and there are no targets. All right, so this was very solid draw, but which is a good result for Pragg. He held with black. The legendary Fabiano Caruana avoided his preparation, and yeah, he's demonstrating high quality chess. So then we have the game between Alireza and Gukesh. This is the game that took down Gukesh from the leadership position, gave the Frenchman the first win in the tournament, and now Alireza might actually be inspired to maybe do Bobby Fischer, who knows? Yeah, Bobby Fischer was famous for his first 2 rounds losses versus Spassky in the World Chess Championship match, but then he proceeded to win 6 games and turn the match around and become the world champion that we know. Also, it is kind of very sweet that in order to do this, Alireza employed London system. So bishop f4 on the second move. This is my favorite move order. d5, e3. I was a little bit surprised that, you know, Indians are generally really well prepared for the London system, considering that Pragg plays London and a whole bunch of other guys plays London. So Gukesh plays c5. He probably did not expect London from Alireza, but he's still playing this line, and yeah. And I think e6 is, if you play like this, I think e6 is inaccurate. The only way to play e6 here, if you go for this bishop d6 line, which is like crazy complicated. But if you want to play queen b6, you should play knight c6 and queen b6 here. But then you have to know all this stuff here, which is also a lot of analysis, and you have to remember it. And to play this without preparation is not very wise thing to do. So yeah, so good psychological preparation by Alireza. He managed to catch Gukesh in this uncomfortable situation after queen b6, rook b1. Suddenly black is faced with the choices how to finish the development. Yeah, apparently he knows something, and he plays bishop d7 with the idea of bishop b5, trading this important attacking bishop. Yeah, this bishop is a big participant in White's London system lines, because once he arrives on d3, he does potential attack here, but also stops the counterplay here. So trading this bishop is kind of important for black. So this is a good idea. However, black spends a lot of time. Yeah, he spends time with the queen, now with the bishop. He's behind in developments, and after the trade, white king will be extremely safe. So in the meantime, white uses this developmental advantage to, create some opportunities on the king side, and h4 is pretty standard move. Okay, so 97 and 97, while looks reasonable, I kind of prefer to play here take and bishop d6. And the idea is if you play 95, then you can castle, and then black can play queen c7 and knight c6 and challenge this guy on e5. Right? So probably it's very complicated. White will probably play h5. You can also think about g4, but h5, h6, and g4 requires analysis stuff. Yeah, white has pretty easy plan. You can just crash through this defense and try to attack. Okay, so he plays knight d7, which is not bad. Rook h3, and maybe h5 first, because now black can play h5 actually. And giving the square is not a big deal. Bishop e7 is a little bit passive, and I think I've said this before. Gukesh has been playing pretty passive for the last couple of games. He was trying to keep his +2 score, but when you play so passively, it's like you're playing for a draw, and you limit yourself, and eventually you get punished for this. So, bishop e7 h5, h6, yeah. a4, forcing the bishop trade, so king can finally move to the safe zone, and then white can put the pieces on board, yeah. So castles, king g1, rook, I think queen c6 is fine, 95, trade is good. So there are two ways for black to play, the knight h7 to stop potential g4, g5, or knight d7. Knight d7 is pretty reasonable. So rook g3, king h8, and Alireza goes a5 here, which is very committing move, because this pawn starts to become weak. Also, the rest of the pawns here on the color of the bishop, which means they are targets for the black squared bishop. Okay, and this pawn is a little bit too far from the rest of the comrades here. Well, the point of a5 is, you know, you're stopping black's famous minority attack. That's the whole point, and you try to lure black into grabbing this guy while, you know, winning some tempies for some activity here. So let's see, queen c7, knight here, grab the pawn, and c4, trying to challenge, I guess, trying to play b4 or challenge the pawn structure, create this pressure on the center. Yeah, so rook g8, I'm not exactly sure why. Like, can you play rook d8 here? It's a big question, yeah? Yeah, probably b4, because I don't think you can take this. Okay, you can actually take this pawn. And the only thing is, if you take here, then white's just winning here because of queen d4. And there is either mate or you grab the bishop and white is completely winning. Yeah, he managed to open up black king. So that's why the computer plays bishop c5 here and tries to put the knight here and keep the position closed. So even this is possible. So this is a very tricky position. But what happens is that Gukesh has been getting into time trouble a lot lately, and in time trouble Alireza is stronger because Alireza has much more experience playing the blitz. So rook g8, rook a1, I guess b4 here doesn't work, so rook a1, trying to get queen b4, forces the defense. And c5, so black plays really well this part, centralizes the knight, he has extra pawn, white pieces are starting to get pretty awkward. And queen c5, again first line move, avoiding all the rook a4, knight c2 stuff, protecting the pawn, and black is ready to, you know, set up the central formation. Yeah, if f3, there is always knight g5, so rook c1, rook d8 looks good, b4, trying to make sure black doesn't recapture on d5 with the queen. So recapture, and now this was a little bit unnecessary. Yeah, this looked kind of unnecessary. Black can just safely take this pawn. Yeah, it seems like unpleasant to allow e6, but first of all there is bishop f6 at tempo, and he has to see also knight c5 here with the idea of taking on e6 and attacking the rook. Okay, so if you don't play e6, then you're most likely gonna play rook b3 here. But after queen a4, you're sort of looking for the endgame, because rook a1 runs into queen d7, yeah, completely winning. So white must take here, allow the queen trades, but after bishop c5, thanks to this knight, and there is this pressure. So black is clearly not worse here. The only question is how to play here. Yeah, rook e8, king g8, or a5, and but regardless of how black plays, he should be fine here. So instead, Gukesh with 3 minutes on the clock versus 12 minutes for Alireza goes into this tactical melee. Apparently, it's not bad, but the problem is white keeps his extra piece. That's the problem. Black has temporarily 3 pawns for a piece, so he has a decent compensation. But there is not more than that. Rook d8 is okay, but it seems actually logical to start pushing these guys as soon as possible. Yeah, and that's where you need the rook actually to help push this guy. I don't know. Probably he was scared of this move, and then rook b7. But this pawn is like running really fast, and white still needs to get rid of the spin before he can free up this knight to do something. And as you guys can see, this pawn is already on the third rank, ready to play a2. And once the pawn reaches a2, white will be forced to deactivate either his knight or his rook to block this pawn, effectively rendering this extra piece useless. Okay, so just push the pawn. Instead we have rook d8, black goes for this pin, and it's unclear how white can defend, but there is queen b3. And the problem is that if you take, white keeps the extra piece. So, but if you take on d4, you cannot take here because rook b4. So you must take on d4, queen b3, rook takes, king h7, rook c5, and the rooks are threatening to create a lot of mating threats. Yeah, black now has to see this only move queen b4, which will keep the game, you know, intact, because the threat is to take this pawn on h5, so the king gets the luft, but still advantage white. Okay, so after queen b3, black has to find in 2 minutes the correct plan. He trades, looks correct, but he now plays a5, and a4 looks good, but now this move doesn't seem right. Yeah, this move doesn't seem right. Black really needs to, you know, connect the pawns, not give any pawns. And after rook a8, he missed knight d7. Now this knight is very sneaky. It looks like white protects the pawn, and he wants to play knight b6. But in reality, there is this threat, you know, to join the rooks and create threats on the 7. So right now, knight b6 is the big threat. And so, like, if a3, oh, actually, you can take this. This was the trap, okay, and there is mate. So that was the trap. So white indirectly protects against a3. So check, looks good. King g3, human. But then human move is not good because you cannot take on a3. Yeah, you put your king in the checking zone. But then where to move the king? Big question. King e1, and if you take on g2, oh, and same idea. Black is not in time to stop this threat. So rook c3 with the idea of rook c8 is actually a threat. All right. But now you play king h7 and if rook f3. Here, the whole point is that white king is going to be checked. The queen, black pawn promotes with the check. That is a critical difference with the game. Because what happened in the game, he plays king h7, and after rook f3, black loses in one move. He went from equal position to lost position just in one move. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Pretty actually incredible. The point is, you need to protect this guy. If you protect this guy, then yeah, because the rook c3, black has this move, stops the rook c8 threat. But there is knight b6, attacking the rook. Rook goes here, and now you have to protect this pawn. But if you do, then white can safely either take on a4, or he can play some adventurous chess and go rook e7 with the idea of knight d7, removing the defender so the rook can come here. Yeah, so this is extremely dangerous position for black, and he makes a mistake by playing king h7. Yeah, just one move. He had 30 seconds, but Alireza finds rook f3 and he's winning. And after this, he is unstoppable. The whole point is that there is check, take on g7, and mate on h7. That's first threat, and the second threat is knight f8. And there's nothing that black can do really. I mean, if you play king g8, It's just knight b6 again, hitting the rooks and threatening all the mates in the world. Yeah, like check here, rook d2, check, check, and you can even do this check. Yeah, because you're attacking the rook and there is mate, and rook easily stops the pawn either from the front or from behind. So Gukesh plays this, and knight f6 is a draw. It's the last trap, because if white plays the obvious knight f6, then you can take, and there is a check, and black actually draws the game. But unfortunately for Gukesh, there is knight f8 move, and the second mating pattern comes into play. Check, and wherever king goes, rook g7 mate is next move. So Gukesh resigns. Actually, very nice game by Alireza. He is aggressive from the get-go, creates threats. Black sort of tries to, sacrifice the piece to avoid being under this pressure, to avoid feeling this aggression. So he sacrifices the piece, which is correct. Okay, so he puts the aggression on white, but then he blunders tactically. You really need to combine tactics. And again, all this happened when they were both low on time. To me, it's absolutely incredible how these guys, take so much risk when they're low on time. Absolutely incredible. All right, and the last game of the round was Abasov versus Vidit. Vidit outplayed his opponents. In the Spanish anti-brilliant was d3. Very fashionable line. Fabiano plays this line with white, but he plays it differently. I think he plays like knight d2, b3, queen e1, knight a5 or something like that. Abasov just tries to trade the bishop and play this position, but it's again not simple. b4, a5. I like this bishop on b7 for now. Allows black to potentially play c5, and the square is under control. The knight on d7 temporarily is also protecting this square, supporting the pawn, and also black keeps an eye on this diagonal, prevents any of that knight h4, f5 stuff. So knight e2, I really don't like this move, but white sort of puts knight on g3. This is standard Spanish maneuver. Except the only point is that this knight is absolutely useless on g3. The only point for knight g3 is if he's protecting the pawn, and white is going to play c4 and d4. But that is pretty wishful thinking, because any pawn movement in the center opening of position will open the black bishop, which can become deadly at any point. So c5 is actually black strikes first. Queen c3, nice try. Indirect protection of the pawn by taking on c7, okay. And equal, but now black position is much worse, I think. Yeah, queen c7. Apparently after bishop a6, black is still fine. But to me it looks like, queen c5. To me it seems like, black is still fine, because white is going to lose one of the pawns. And then the bishop is active and knight doesn't have these squares, but knight can potentially get to f6. So that might be a cause of concern for black, If the knight gets to f6, black is in a huge trouble. So he didn't want to, take the risk, and why? Just play f6, Protect the pawn. Play very safe. Black has no weaknesses in his position. His pieces are very, good. Nice bishops, and he can start slowly about playing for a win here. So rook b1 is also a pretty strange move. You protect the pawn, but you put the knight from here to g3, and you put the rook from here to here. So you're kind of going this sideways dance. It's like cross-eyed thing. It's kind of weird. Rook f7 protecting the queen in case of all these trades, so the knight can go, and queen is protected. Knight d2. I think at this point white simply lost the thread of the game because he has no plans for improvement. White cannot improve his position, while black can actually improve his position. So Abasov tries knight d2, h5, useful move, but now knight returns to stop h4. Okay, queen e6. Black slowly improves his position. Queen gets to control some squares. h3, very reasonable. White just goes full defense, and black slowly improves his position inch by inch. Yeah, king g7. Potentially now the rook can enter the game here to play h4. The only problem with king on g7 is that, you know, you're putting this king into the x-ray. There is no f5. But again, right now the game is very balanced. You know, very balanced. So let's see how things changed. Queen d6. Now black is sort of threatening to take due to this rook being unprotected. Knight h4, counter-attacking, right? Using the fact that the king is on g7. King h7, and queen e1 is a little bit weird move. I'm not sure why the engine says that ba5 is okay. Because it looks like black is better, and yeah, it is better, right? Because white is stuck with the weakness on a3. You don't want to be stuck with the weakness. So queen e1, potentially this queen can go to e2, hit the pawn chain, go for the piece sack, right? So rook g7, very safe. Queen e6 back, protecting against the forks. Both sides are playing very cautious, and now white plays c3 finally. Finally, he cannot hold, yeah, and he has, at this point, let's look at the time. White has 1 hour, black has 28 minutes. So I think this is the reason why Abasov played c3. Yeah, he's trying to sharpen the game and to get black into the time trouble and hope for the black to blunder something. Yeah, but c3 is a strategic risk because now this pawn chain is weakened, and if this pawn is gone, then white double pawns are weak. All right, so let's see what happens. King g8, black just ignores whatever white is doing. Rook goes back to f1. The pawn is now protected, and still this pawn is protected. So there is no clear plan for white to do anything, but I would say that it's not clear what black can do also. a4 is reasonable to make sure that this rook is free to play. Bishop goes to c6 to protect this guy. And c4, okay, makes a lot of sense. Now that the pawn is on a4, white can think about playing queen c2, b5, and get this knight to c3 to attack this guy, yeah? Or the knight goes to d5. So actually Abasov is playing pretty well this part of the game. Black is trying to counterattack the weakness. Makes a lot of sense. Knight f8. And this is a little bit premature, but you know, it makes sense, right? It makes sense because black pawns are now stuck. You don't have the knight that is coming to the square. But this is very strange move. Yeah, white. If you play with white like this, you know that black is going to play bishop c6, protect this pawn, and you really need this knight ASAP on d5. Okay, this knight has to be there as soon as possible, or at the very least on the c3 square where we can attack this guy. Rook f3, trying to create pressure against this pawn. It's just, you know, it's not going to work. These pawns are easily protected by black, but now black has access to the rook b3 invasion. So knight e2, knight goes to d5, but after queen d6, you know, yeah, white plays this really fast, yeah? He plays this move really fast, and he goes from good position to bad position. He should play rook d1 first, and then knight e2, knight c3. The difference is that you cannot play rook d1 here because of the pin. You're gonna lose this pawn. And now you're actually forced to play knight c1, but that's not why the knight went to e2. Yeah, the reason why knight went to e2 is to go to c3, d5. On c1, this is incredibly horrible knight. I like f5. Now that the knight is on c1, absolutely useless. black can start aggression and go for this pawn. So a little bit self-destruct by Abasov, but let's see what happens. G5, black looks absolutely winning here. The threat is G4, G3, fork. So white plays here, but then knight f6. This pawn is now hanging. Knight here, rook d6, and after rook d6, white is back in the game. Yeah, it's amazing how one little move can change the course of the game so much. Yeah, apparently queen d6 was best, with the idea to play queen d3 and move white queen from this perfect spot. This is perfect spot for the queen. Attacking pawn, protecting here, and protecting the square for the knight. So queen d3 looks like advantage black, because now white has to probably go onto this line. Take, rook f2, grab, and then we have second rook coming here, and it's advantage for black. Yeah. So Vidit plays rook d6. Now white can improve his knight. Yeah. Knight here, knight c3. I'm not sure why knight c3 is not played. Was he afraid of queen e6? But there is always rook f5. Yeah. Yeah, this was a little bit weird. Okay, the reason black plays bishop d7 is so you can play c6 at some point to prevent the square from gaining away. But, okay, so what happens? Oh, white plays knight b1. Yeah, the idea behind knight b1 is you want to keep this knight on g1, I guess, to protect your king, and put this knight on d5, and then the second knight on c3. If you do that, then black is good, but of course Vidit finds h4, perfect idea. Because if you play g4 now, there is the sack and pawns roll, and it's winning position for black. So knight here, c6, looks good. g4, inaccurate. Rook h7 followed by rook h4, creating pressure on the white king. Very close to winning. g4 is okay, doesn't completely let go of the advantage, but after knight g3, knight gets to f5, yeah? So, oh, he actually blundered rook f6. Okay, that's the problem. Yeah, now he had to play queen d8 here, apparently, and keep this pawn here intact, so, you know, some lines like white takes here, take. This is now looking completely different, okay? Because you have this move and queen h3, and you take everything with a tempo. So, so Vidit blundered here by playing gh3. He has 24 minutes, he has plenty of time to think, but he blundered this trade, and the difference is that with the pawn h3, white king is very safe. Very safe. Takes on h4, take, queen d2, and black cannot get to this king at all. Also, this pawn is hanging, and a potential invasion to d6. So, black must make a draw here. Bishop c8. The point is, if you take on a4 with the knight, you can take on a4 here. So queen e2, attacking, moving, and it's a draw. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy game also. You see how skillfully Vidit slowly pushed his opponent into making some mistakes, but then he didn't capitalize on it. Yeah, that's important quality. You must not only get the advantage, but then you must be able to convert it with the iron hand. Okay, this is the quality that separates the champions from the top grandmasters, because the champion, he makes sure to beat his opponent, okay, to complete that conversion. All right, so that was the last round of the game. After the first half of the tournament, we have clear first for Nepo. Same situation as the last two candidates. Despite losing the game, Gukesh is still sharing the second place, but now he is joined by Fabiano Caruana and his compatriot Pragna. The table doesn't show the tie breaks. I'm not sure what are the tie breaks for this event, but again, do we really care? we only really care about who wins the tournament, right, and gets the right to challenge for the World Chess Championship title. But after all these gentlemen with +1 score, there is 50% people. 50% people are Naka and Vidit. And 50% people, they're only 1 point behind the leader. They're only 1 point behind Nepo. If Nepo loses the game, the tournament is thrown into total chaos. But, people need to beat him actually. Nepo, was close to losing to Prague, Yesterday against Nakamura, he came also very dangerously close. So the trend is there. And based on this trend, this is a very dangerous trend. Nepo is walking on the edge. Although I think he likes that. I think he likes walking on the edge. That's how he plays chess, and that's how he plays the tournaments. Walking on the edge. One step, inviting his opponent to do the same, and his opponents, when they stand on the edge, right? That's where the mental battle goes and chess battle goes, and one of them must either win or step into the abyss. So most of the people, they try to be sensible and they just prefer the status quo. But also, again, the fact that he saved those games is speaking that luck is on his side. Kind of incredible, but it is. So Naka and Prague at 50%, still chances to catch the leader. And then we have Vidit. Oh, actually Vidit also there, So yes, Nakamura and Vidit at 50%. And then we have clear outsiders, which is Alireza with -2, but he improved. He got his first win. So Abasov right now is the only player who doesn't have a win. Wait. And also does Fabiano Caruana, who made all draws. The super solid player, all draws, even with Abasov. He should have beaten Abasov, if he wanted to keep his aspirations for the title. But okay, Fabiano actually did beat Abasov. Okay, what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing. Okay, so actually everybody has a win. Everybody has a win except Abasov. And the big question, of course, since I'm gonna repeat the same thing I said yesterday. The outsider is extremely dangerous because sooner or later he's gonna win the game, and the leaders are scared of these guys because it might be the game against them, right? Just like yesterday was the game between Alireza and Gukesh, right? But Alireza is getting stronger and stronger with each game. The only thing is when you win the game and you have the rest day, it kind of breaks your momentum. It's good for the side that lost the game because then you get the day to recuperate, okay, and recover. But if you're winning and then you have the rest day, your momentum is kind of slack, and we'll see, right? So. Are there any theoretical chances for Alireza to catch the leaders? Sure, there always are theoretical chances. But in order to do that, he needs to score from -2 to +2. He needs to win 4 games out of 7, which will be a miracle in this event. If he scores 4 wins, he can actually, he can go from -2 to +2 for sure. All right. So tomorrow, we have the second game between Nakamura and Caruana. This is critical game because if Naka doesn't use his white color again and he allows Fabiano to make a draw, Fabi is also half a point ahead of Nakamura. That's going to leave 6 games and less games with white for Nakamura. I do suspect it's going to be a draw though. Because they know each other like for so many years. They've been playing on the same team for many years, and Fabi, it was always a little bit higher in the overall standings in the world rankings. He also played for the World Challenger title, right? So Fabi is a little bit I can't say he's a better player, but he's got better results, okay? And I don't think it's going to be easy for Nakamura with his current level of preparation to beat Caruana. So it's very likely to be a draw. Nepo versus Abasov. In this game, Nepo has a huge chance to increase his lead in the tournament because he's playing the outsider with the white collar, which is actually excellent. Excellent for Nepo. The only thing, if Nepo oversteps and plays too sharp or blunders something, Abasov can catch him. So theoretically speaking, let's keep the fingers crossed for the Abasov to deliver the masterpiece, okay? And then we have Pragg versus Alireza. So Alireza just beats his compatriots in a good game. And Pragg needs to win this game. Yeah, he needs to win this game to, to move to catch Nepo. He has good chances with white. Alireza also, yeah, it's going to be a difficult game for Alireza because Pragg is very, very solid player. Very hard to beat him. It's very hard to beat him, especially with white. Yeah, I mean, with Alireza playing black, it's going to be difficult. He has to survive the preparation first of all, and we've seen that Pragg has amazing prep for this tournament. Yeah, very hard to say. I do hope that I still in this game I want the Frenchman. Yeah, I'm now in France. I like Alireza and I'm rooting for Alireza still. Yeah, so I think draw is actually a good result for him in this game. If he's gonna he needs to survive the opening, and draw is a good result. Okay, because with white he has chance to win. For Gukesh, I want him to recover. He plays his compatriot, Vidit. What happened in their first round game? Let's see, Gukesh versus Vidit. 2 versus 6. It's a draw. Okay. So, yeah, I think, Vidit is going to try actually hard to win with white, this probably, because, he has white. His opening prep is better than Gukesh, I think. And he is now seen how to beat Gukesh actually. Yeah, Gukesh is trying to play passive. It's not his natural chess. Natural chess for Gukesh is this aggressive fighting chess, not the passive defending chess. That's why, in the last game against Alireza, he sacrificed the piece. He got a good position, but he blundered. Yeah. So tactics is a problem for Gukesh. He's missing tactics. Vidit is doing good, but he is very cautious also. Yeah, he is spoiling so many winning positions. It's actually amazing how many winning positions he spoiled. He spoiled his winning position versus Fabiano. He spoiled yesterday winning position against Abasov. If we took into account all those spoilers, right, he would be now like sole leader of the tournament, man. So that's why I say that Vidit still has pretty good chance to be top 3, maybe even top 2. So very dangerous game for Gukesh tomorrow because Vidit will be pressing. So Naka, Fabi probably draw. Jan versus Abasov. I think Jan has good chance to win. Pragg versus Alireza. Either Pragg wins or Alireza makes a draw. And Vidit versus Gukesh. Either Vidit wins or Gukesh makes a draw, which is very interesting. All right. So, gentlemen, hope you liked the recap, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, maybe even after tomorrow with the recap, and enjoy the tournament. Later today, we're gonna do the thematic opening arena, and that's where I'll answer all those questions that you guys have. Okay, so see you, everybody.